The Shadow Collector. Scientific report. When the absence learned. The first anomaly was logged as a sensor fault on April 17th at 2:14 UTC. The Helios array registered a localized photometric null over Sector E9, a major metropolitan area. The data showed no obstruction, no absorption. Light entered the region and simply failed to return. The system recalibrated automatically. No alert was issued. 12 minutes later, 3 independent satellites confirmed the same result. The city was still there. Thermal signatures were normal. Electromagnetic noise matched expected urban patterns. Yet visually, the area could not be rendered. It was not dark. It was missing. Engineers described it as a hole in representation. Initial hypotheses focused on atmospheric interference and synchronized sensor malfunction. Solar activity was nominal. The anomaly persisted across all wavelengths. The term absence event entered internal documentation. At 5:40 UTC, the area expanded by 11.3 meters. There was no seismic activity, no thermal shift. The growth was circular and precise, governed by a consistency that suggested intent rather than chaos. Ground confirmation proved difficult. Signals entering the zone degraded unpredictably. Live feeds froze without errors. When transmissions resumed, timestamps no longer matched recorded duration. One operator claimed to have watched a street camera for 6 minutes. The system log showed 42 seconds. This discrepancy was archived without comment. At 14:18 UTC, the first civilian report arrived. A municipal worker near the perimeter described a shadow on the pavement that moved against the sun. The report was classified as stress-induced misperception and removed from the primary data. That decision would later be reversed. By data, the anomaly defied classification. It was not darkness. Photons were not blocked. They were unaccounted for. Mathematical models suggested a breakdown in local physical rules. The theory was rejected due to lack of precedent. Human effects became harder to dismiss. Analysts reported vertigo while seated. Eye tracking revealed involuntary movements when viewing the anomaly, as if the eyes attempted to follow something invisible. Linguistic analysis flagged a recurring phrase across independent reports. It feels like it is paying attention. No briefing had introduced this idea. At 22:31 UTC, shadows near the perimeter began to desynchronize from their sources. They lagged behind movement. In some cases, they arrived early. High-speed cameras confirmed the effect. A subject raised their arm. The shadow followed late. Then, without further motion, it adjusted itself, stretching toward the absence. When the subject stepped away from the light source, the shadow remained. Automated shadow mapping confirmed what human observers reported. Shadows were detaching. At 3:07 UTC on day 3, an internal memo proposed abandoning the term absence. The anomaly reacted to observation density. Areas under heavier surveillance expanded faster. Observation appeared to accelerate growth. The phrase adaptive void appeared in an unpublished draft. It was never approved. Containment protocols were drafted without a defined target. Power reductions and lighting blackouts were implemented. The anomaly expanded faster in darkness. Spectral analysis revealed faint internal structure within the void, not images or matter, but repeating statistical patterns. One physicist compared it to a learning system without a training set. On day 5, a research drone crossed the boundary and vanished from all data sets. No debris. No signal loss. It simply ceased to exist in recorded reality. Minutes later, a silhouette appeared along the inner edge of the anomaly. It resembled a human figure. It did not move, yet its orientation shifted relative to the observer. The silhouette cast a shadow. This discovery changed the working model. The anomaly was no longer empty. It was assembling internal references from what it removed. Personnel began reporting identical dreams. They stood in unlit rooms. Their shadows faced them independently. When the shadow spoke, there was no sound. Yet the message was clear. You left me behind. Psychological evaluation found no shared background to explain the convergence. The term shadow collector first appeared in a deleted annotation attached to a sleep study. By the second week, secrecy failed. Smaller anomalies appeared globally, each formed where observation was denser. A controlled experiment was approved. A terminally ill volunteer approached the boundary under full monitoring. At 1.7 meters, he reported the sensation of being watched from behind. Cameras showed nothing. At 1.2 meters, his shadow stretched toward the anomaly. At 0.8 meters, the shadow detached and crossed the boundary alone. The subject collapsed. Cardiac rhythm was restored. Neurological scans revealed a localized absence in the occipital lobe, not damage absence. When asked what he felt, the subject replied, it knew which part was extra. The final report was never submitted. In the last stable transmission, a senior analyst addressed the oversight committee. We misunderstood the order, she said. Objects create shadows. Shadows remember shape. They remembered longer than matter does. Behind her, shadows pooled in places where no one stood. It is not removing us, she continued. It is keeping what we leave behind. Satellite feeds now show distributed anomalies worldwide. Each grows where certainty is strongest. This report cannot conclude with recommendations. The phenomenon responds to definition, and we have already taught it to many. If this document is being read, you are still visible. Check your... Shut up. If this document is being read, you are still visible. You have not been removed. Check your shadow. I was not supposed to keep a copy of the report. That was the final instruction, delivered calmly, without threat or emphasis, as if obedience were a natural law, like gravity. All working drafts were to be purged, all annotations deleted, all personal notes surrendered. The phenomenon was to be studied only through approved channels, by approved eyes, for as long as those eyes remained useful. I kept the report anyway. At first, it felt like a precaution, an intellectual reflex. Scientists archive instinctively, even when we pretend we do not. But within days, the reason changed. I no longer opened the file to analyze it. I opened it to reassure myself that the words were still there, that the sequence of events remained fixed, that reality had not quietly edited itself when I was not looking. After the shutdown, I returned home alone. The apartment lights worked. The walls were solid. My reflection behaved correctly in the mirror. These confirmations mattered more than I was willing to admit. I avoided dark rooms. I avoided windows at sunset, not out of fear, premeditated myself, but to limit uncontrolled variables. The first deviation occurred on the third night. I noticed my shadow before I noticed anything else. It was cast at the correct angle, the correct length, but it arrived late, a fraction of a second behind my movement. Too subtle to alarm anyone else, impossible to unsee. Once noticed, I stopped. It stopped a moment later. I told myself it was exhaustion. The report warned us that the anomaly learned through definition. It spread through attention. It spread through the things we named. Then we discarded them as secondary. Shadows were never the cause. They were only the consequence. We measured light. We measured mass. We never measured what followed us faithfully until we stopped looking. I began leaving lights on at night. That made it worse. In illuminated rooms, my shadow fragmented. It clung to corners. It pulled where walls met. It behaved less like an effect and more like a habit. When I turned off the lights completely, I could feel it standing where it should not have been. It was not outlined by light. It was outlined by certainty. On the seventh night, I spoke to what was there. I did not ask questions. I did not use names. I only said what the report never allowed us to admit. I know you were there. The shadow did not answer. It stepped closer. That was when I understood the final error in our models. The phenomena was never arriving from elsewhere. It did not invade. It did not spread. It waited. And now that I have written this, now that you have read it, the definition is complete. If you feel watched from behind, do not turn around. If your shadow hesitates, do not call attention to it. And if it ever moves first, remember it is not learning anymore. It already knows you. End of part 3. You watched this story. Now become part of it. buycoffee.to/butterflyproject.